negro y todos me señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Rise up, rise up. It's been a minute. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Good to see you on here.
In the flesh.
Hey, it's been a minute for y'all, man. I'm here every day slaving, man.
Kevin's holding down the fort.
And Kalanji keep cracking the whip, man. Man, can I get a day off? I need a break.
No.
How y'all doing, man? Y'all got a new president over there. I haven't been back since.
Hey, not y'all. They got a new president, man.
They got a new president. I'm indigenous. That motherfucker ain't got nothing to do with me.
And they getting mad at me because of who their president is. Like, don't blame me. Like, I ain't vote for that dude. So, you can't
or blaming individuals like myself who are Afro-Indigenous and don't believe in voting under oppressive system and imperialist system. So tell me, I didn't do enough. Shit. I wish you would say I didn't do enough.
Bro, all you gotta do is just give them that history of indigenous people in America and what America has done to indigenous people. And if they still think you should vote, then there's something wrong with them, man.
Well, again,
there is something wrong with them.
And we've seen it very prevalent too. A large fluctuate of indigenous people in South Dakota and North Dakota voted for Agent Orange, also known as Donald Trump. And it's a tool of manipulation, a tool of indoctrination, a tool of conformation. It is a tool of concession, as A-Trap Brown would classify it. And so, voting under this system ain't shit. And, you can say it was a protest vote to vote for third party. All you want. It's cool. I know, but that's not my argument.
He's talking to me, y'all. He coming at me right now. Damn, bro. Why are you starting early in the morning? Come on, man.
Shit. It's good to be back with you guys. I know I was gone for a minute. And it was well needed. But nonetheless, I'm back. There were some people that had been asking me if I had left, if I had, called it a quits. And I said, nope. I said, that's not, some people just need some time off, there's a lot that it doesn't get highlighted as far as for what we all do, the lives that we have to live, the personal situations that we go through. And so to have a cadre, to have this network and the respect that we all give each other to say, hey, we need some time. I need some time to figure out how I'm going to reorganize my life. And so that's what happened. And I'm back. I'm glad, that you guys were able to hold down the fort. I could say right now we beat Professor Griff in views, and that's something.
He always try to beef with somebody, man.
Shout out Professor Griff, man.
Yeah, shout out to Professor Griff. I know that everybody on this network, works really hard and diligently to create content and for the masses of people. And so I just want to give credit where credit is due to every single individual that's on this network. And my goal moving forward is to help the other networks via production and getting them some logos, getting them some background designs, making it real real tailored to what individuals talk about, give it its own sense of identity, and also for the viewers so they can see this is a network that has multitudes of individuals that come on and they talk about stuff, one of which is on screen right now. Fernando with Vital Hoops podcast, been rolling out every week comes out
every other week.
Every other week. It felt like every week these past couple weeks.
I guess that's good. No, definitely shout out to all the people at Black Power Media that we don't see, the people behind that are not behind the camera, but just behind the scenes.
The ones that we have set individuals that help us with research. So shout out to research team. We got individuals that are working on silent stills, i.e. meaning silent videos that we could just put on screen for you guys, and it's tailored to the conversation. So we're working hard. We're trying to, we're all doing our best. And then also we're all connected to some form of organizations or set committees. I'm a part of Leonard's, committee. I know you guys are in your guys' own organizations, and there's just a lot that we go through, and this is this is just us expressing our love and solidarity for all the people that do the same work that we do, even if it's not at the same rate, same capacity. It's all warranted, it's all needed, and it's going to be needed these next 3 months before Agent Orange's administration.
Agent Orange.
Right. But I will add that we do need your help. So if you can,
support
definitely
down
hit up
there.
The Patreon.
Down there, please. This is a donation-based network. This is a grassroots cadre. Most of the stuff that we do costs. It does, and it puts a damper on majority of our pockets. And we just hope that you guys like the content, and we're really trying to get the Patreon up. We have some ideas that have been flowing around, some things that we want to do. We know that I was watching recently, Kimba, the Jordan Nichols situation. So we're going to need a reporter, a correspondent there every day, sitting in and with press credentials, all of that. We need the people's help for that. And so if you could, below are areas and ways that you can do so, and it's very, very much appreciated. You guys want to jump into this into this article real quick, or
well, before we jump into if we could, man, because you had mentioned yesterday's I think it was yesterday's podcast. That was yesterday, right? That was a pretty dope podcast, man. I just want to emphasize that that people should go and tap into that on the Indigenous Nightmare podcast, man, because the conversation was powerful. And I'm not saying this because I jumped on there for a little bit, but it was yesterday's
conversation was
it
was needed, especially at this time period, because for those who don't know, I spoke with Laith Maroof. He's been on this network before as well on BPM Reloaded. He'll be back on BPM Reloaded as soon as we can get a date scheduled. Really emphasize a lot of the stuff that not just we talk about here on BPM, but also what I talk about on my own network, on the Indigenous Nightmare Network. And it was centered around, okay, we went through 4 years of some form of pandering or asking the system to play nice. We do it every 4 years, though. We are in a position now where they have, in those every set of 4 years, worked in bipartisanship to keep capitalism and imperialism afloat abroad and domestic. And so where we're at right now is this, as a people, as an African diaspora, we have to start working with the organizations that have already told individuals that our means of revolution will not come through electoral politics. There's a lot of them that are out there. There's a lot of them that I'm connected to. There's a lot of individuals that I'm connected to with this same approach. And so all they're asking for, and again, too, we have to understand, we are on stolen land. These are the occupied territories of Turtle Island. So trying to create a coalition or trying to vote under an electoral system that is rooted in the platform of itself is on the backs and blood of indigenous people from Africa and indigenous people from the lands that they stole. If we are not at a root base understanding of that at that level, that the indigenous population and the African masses of people here in the occupied territories of Turtle Island will be that vanguard. They will be those individuals. You know, if people don't understand that, then you have a lot really to learn. And there's 3 months for us to really hone in and prepare for 4 years of ethno-fascist legislation, behavior, tactics abroad that they use to uphold imperialism. And so, yeah, I know I went on a little tangent there, but I really, really want people to I want people to really understand what is needed and how we accomplish that. And it does not come from a concession, from a conformation, as we've seen certain individuals, you know, just from our diaspora, just blatantly accept, you know, make America great again. Just like, here, give me that fucking red hat. You know, like that's the type of energy that we do not need in revolution, in getting the masses of people to understand. So while they are highly indoctrinated, our masses, we need to, on the same rate, make sure that people understand the truth. And that's what's good about Black Power Media Reloaded. What's good about Black radical media in general, decolonizing media, is that we're telling the truth. We charge colonialism as a part of it. I love when Frank goes off, you know, and tells people how it is, because it's needed. We don't get that in mainstream media, and we never will, because mainstream media is owned by 4 companies that also worked in reciprocity under this election system,
of course,
to make sure that they bought the president that they wanted. FCC, or Citizens United versus FCC, okay, which basically gives autonomy to corporations to spend as much money as they fucking want during an election period. Excuse my French. You know,
going on.
You know,
so
them unlimited access to funding. So when Elon Musk said he's going to spend $50 million because this is his only way to beat the Supreme Court in his case for misuse of wages, for, in his case, unionization, trying to union bust, he was truthful when he said that. And that's how this works. Corporations is what buys elections. It is not us going to these polling stations. They could say 77 people were indoctrinated into believing that Kamala was going to win. They could say that 77 million fucking people that voted for Trump that are indoctrinated, you know, is what won. But all they're doing is pointing out the obvious and not saying the quiet part out loud, is that we have over 140 million people in this country that are indoctrinated. That's a lot of work that needs to be done, you guys. That's a lot of work. I don't think necessarily 3 months even will help that. And so I land my 747, you know, Air Force One plane. You know,
that's an expensive plane right there, but
and we got levels. We got levels of indoctrination too. You know what I mean? We got levels. We got some people we got some people so far gone, man. African people, indigenous people rocking that red hat. You know what I'm saying? And then we got people. We got all types of levels, man. You know.
Yeah, most definitely, man.
But we definitely have to take this opportunity to let people know that now more than ever, it's time to organize. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we know us people that are, you know, that are in movement, that are part of organizations. We know that our work hasn't changed. You know what I mean? From before the elections to now, we're still, you know, we understand what our goals is. We understand what we got to do, but we just got to find better tactics. We got to keep getting better, keep doing. We got to do more. We got to, you know,
we have to reformulate. We have to reformulate our thinking of what it is to combat fascism now, because the tools of which that we have constructed ourselves over the course of whatever time limit you want to put on it. We have whole organizations that ran as presidential candidates that haven't changed their party lines in over 20 years. Okay. We have individuals that are consistently trying to do the same things, like peaceful protesting, the same way that Dr. King administered, which got us civil rights. Yes, but it didn't give us equal rights. That's a fact. Okay. Because we still live under an imperial mode. Now, that's not a flaw for Dr. King by any means. So I don't want people to think that they could quote me and say I'm being disrespectful to Dr. King, because Dr. King in of it himself also classified if he questioned if he was integrating into a burning house, and he was. This was, so all I'm doing is pointing out the obvious, is that we need to reframe how we even combat fascism and how we organize on a level. We need more survival programs than we've ever needed in the last 20 years. We need more security programs for not just Black men, not just Black women, but also Black trans and the LGBTQ communities as well. We need to start really formulating and putting all of these identity politics, microaggressions aside and saying, hey, you're from the diaspora, right? Regardless of how I feel about how you live, how your lifestyle is whatsoever, how do we come together cohesively as Africans and put everything else aside that does not, as Malcolm X would classify, put that shit in the closet, okay? Because the real goal at hand is we have ethno-fascism on the rise. And
but it's been there. Yeah, but part of it is that for many people, that's where we're stuck. We're stuck right there. We're stuck at some place where people, like you said you're part of the diaspora, right? A lot of people won't see that. They're stuck in another identity and another thinking and another. They're thinking they're American. They're thinking they're a million things before they're African.
Exactly, and
before they understand it, so they're not really understanding what time it is.
It's not the diaspora's fault, and I want to just classify and clarify that we live under a system that we haven't properly or been able to, because of either counterinsurgency. They killed and martyred off some of our ancestors and elders and whatnot. I can name a list, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows who exactly I'm talking about. Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Walter Rodney, Steve Biko, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Che Guevara, all of these individuals, all of these intellects, these individuals that understood the assignment because they created the fucking assignment. Okay? They're no longer here. What we have are contemporary versions of conformity, of individuals that have told the masses of people that, hey, go out and vote. That's how we fix these things. Go out and vote, or believe, in conforming into a ethno-evangelical, fascist state, and just believe everything that it says. And we know for a fact that there are 77 million people of which majority are from our diaspora that believe that, because they voted for Kamala Harris. So again, they don't point out the obvious. They don't say the quiet part out loud, is how many individuals are indoctrinated into believing that electoral process, even ranked choice voting, they will find a way, corporations will find a way to leverage their power to get the person that they want to be the number one ranked individual. It goes back to what Laith Maroof said on yesterday's show, Ikemba and Fernando, is that there's no name a revolutionary time period in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years that voted for their liberation. It goes back to what O'Malley Yeshitela says. Name a time and place where we voted our way into slavery and let us vote our way out. Name a time and place where we in history sang our way into slavery, and we will sing our way. I'll be the first falsetto up for grabs. Hey, I'm here. Let me know what you need me to do. But that's not realistic. It's not rooted in realism. It's rooted in utopian like understanding, is that we can work under the same system that oppresses us. We are asking them to play nice, and at the same time trying to work within that system, which brings us further and further into conformation, further into that concession that H-Rap Brown classifies for, or formerly known H-Rap Brown, now known as Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who is a political prisoner, who is 80 years old. And shout out to Kalanji, who got a shout out from Killer Mike on that show. I have my own difference of opinions, but I'll keep that to myself in regards to that conversation.
Being liberal, comrade. You're being liberal right now. But,
You're being liberal.
Nah, definitely. Yeah, hey, tough to y'all cooking right now, man. Great conversation. Your point about voting too, you know, a part of that indoctrination is this idea that our ancestors died to vote. And then, you know, there's that movement, Puff Daddy, you know, he's pushing vote or die.
Vote or die, man.
Shit, it used to be organize or die, right? Like, then it went from organize or die to vote or die.
The mental side, man, they got us.
That's the same with the Rainbow Coalition. The Rainbow Coalition went from all power to the people to the I can, I will, I am, or some shit like that. You know, it was everything that has been radical from the last 40 to 50 years has been deeply you know, indoctrinated. It's been, you know, a part of the conformation process. It has worked in reciprocity with that Black misleadership class that Glenn Ford talks about. You know, and that's how we get the Cory Bookers that, you know, misuse and misconstrue the words of Dr. King. But again, if Dr. King was here, he would, you know, he would have the difference of opinion on a lot of individuals that we see. I see that our guest is here. Did you want to go to a quick break before we bring him on, or did you want to just jump right into the conversation?
Let's go into that Black Power break, man. Appreciate everybody too for tapping in. Make sure that you like and share the podcast. Subscribe if this is your first time here, and hit that notification bell. So when
hit that bell,
so you know when we on and popping, man. We got a great conversation coming up. So you know, stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So enjoy this break for Black Power. We'll be right back.
Rise up.
That obviously, if the bourgeois element in America and the ruling elite in America owns the media, then the media will be used by that class to carry out its programs and its ideologies. And it will use the media to try to brainwash and falsify the consciousness of African people. But while we look at that, we must look at the ownership of our own media. Yes. And see what class of people own that media. Then you can solve the puzzle as to why that media is always preaching to you about voting. As if voting was the only source of power in America. Because those people that own those stations achieve their social position and power through America's electoral system. That's why it's important to them. Because the class of people that own those stations and control those stations got their position through what? Electioneering and by being attached to the Democratic Party. And one thing that a bourgeois leadership and a leadership elite tries to do is to convince the masses that the masses can have their interests satisfied by satisfying the bourgeois' interests. And therefore, when they get elected to office, or they get high appointed office, they tell you, ain't we progressing? Doesn't that mean an advancement for black folk? When they are the only one who have advanced, and you don't have a new nickel in your pocket as a result of their being in this position. And so they want to make you think that their elections and their ability to wheedle out of the Democratic parties and the Republican parties money that advance their economic interests represents an advancement for you. And therefore they fail to give you a true education as to what politics is really about in America. And power in America is not in voting. You have to understand that. Why? If you'd even review your own history, you would recognize that what you call your most significant victories were gained before you gained the right to vote in 1964 and 1965. Did you vote to get the vote?
All right. Absolutely not. All right.
Huh? Recognize what you're going on here. But someone will tell you that there's no other way.
All right.
But what did we say? Power in America is based in America's corporations. Is determined by those who own the means of production and who own property. Power and property ownership go together in America. No property-less people, no people who own no productive businesses are in power in America. I don't care what kind of votes they have. And recognize this, that where the power is, you cannot vote them out of power. Because those who run America's multinational corporations and run America's institutions don't run for office. They tell the people in office what to do. And therefore, if you are to wield real power in America, you must own the sources of power. And those sources mean the ownership of productive facilities and the ownership of property. And the control of major institutions and the ability to weld yourself together as a people and to control your consumption and to control your behavior in ways that you can exert your influence upon this system. But yet we get a medium that tells people, vote, vote, go out and vote. And you're going to suffer all the more as a result thereof. Yes, you got to face the reality. You got to know where it's going. Power lies in strategy. It lies in technique. It lies in alignment. You see. Why were blacks before they got to vote able to change the South? Through voting? Through alignments, through alliances, through control of their consumer rights. As you said time and time again, that to a great extent the civil rights movement was a consumer movement. It was a situation where blacks refused to spend their money in particular ways and in particular places. And by withdrawing their consumption, they were able to change the South before a single law was passed in their favor. Just the ability of black people to line up side by side and shoulder to shoulder and to march in one straight line.
Yo. Hey, man, I love my ancestor right there. Love my ancestor. I swear.
Amazing.
Heck yeah. And I was joking in the background, the guy, as he's talking, you can hear somebody in the background, 4 more years, because that's what they tell us,
No doubt. Yeah, for sure.
4 more years. Come on, man. But yeah, Dr. Wilson, definitely on point, and I hope these Black Power breaks encourage people to go look further into the work.
Yes.
Because Dr. Amos Wilson, man, he has a catalog of texts of books that we should be studying, especially when it comes to the development of an African-centered psychology. He addresses all of that. Why do Africans do the things that we do in the community, whether it's intercommunal violence, whether it's you wanting to climb the social ladder and be a part of this political economy of this colony, the miseducation, how to counter the miseducation of our babies. He touches on so many different topics, man. So I definitely, appreciate him, one of the greats. And yeah, just want to encourage people to dive into his work. But even in this particular clip, you know, the talk about of voting, why Black people, people from our community, encourage us to go vote, because they have a vested interest, right, to be a part of that bourgeois class and to reap the benefits of the Democratic Party gaining power. There's Black people who benefit from the Democratic Party. But when we look in our communities, and, you know, this is something that I can't even argue against when you have Republicans, you know, conservatives, people who are on the other side who say, you know, look at these cities that have been ran by Democrats, you know, like, and the conditions that they're in. I mean, like, how can you even argue against that? Because, yeah, you know, we've done had Black mayors, Black Democratic mayors, city council people, you know, people who are in positions of power. But we see
entire war cabinet is
man.
So,
but the wealth gap keeps growing,
and people are still celebrating that.
And people are still celebrating that. So it's more than just having, you know, Black face and power. But, you know, with Dr. Amos and Wilson, just to segue, well, before, if y'all had some feedback, but I want to just say, like, even the guests that we have today, Professor Hank Williams, I came across a professor from doing some research for courses in New York that were similar to a course that I was attempting to develop or working on developing, in which we will organize or teach students how to do community organizing, how to get in the field and actually do some practical work and being agents of change. So, you know, thinking about this course and what it will look like, I'm just looking to see what are some courses that are similar to give me some sort of inspiration, you know, and plus, you know, you're trying to develop something new. So let me see what other people are doing. So maybe it's something I can do that is different, right? And so doing that research, I came across Professor Hank Williams' course. And not only was he doing the course similar to something I wanted to develop, I'm looking at the book that he's using, The Blueprint for Black Power by Amos Wilson. I was not expecting that. I'm like, hold on. Like, we can use this. I've been wanting to use it. I'm like, we can use this in our course and not get in trouble. So, you know, that was you know, very inspiring just to see, you know, someone teaching within the CUNY system using that text. I have used the falsification of African consciousness in one of my courses. I got a little nervous because there was a sister who well, not nervous, I guess, but I was like, you know, let me be careful, because Dr. Wilson, he makes a point in the text where it's not about white people whether they're devils or not. Is whether they act like devils, something along those lines. And of course, you know, she's taking it as he's calling white people devils, and like, you know, man, you got to read carefully and see, you know, understand what he's saying, but having that conversation. But I don't want to hold up the guest. Professor Hank Williams, appreciate you being here. Before we go to you, I just want to briefly read your bio. Henry Hank Williams is a lecturer in the Africana Studies Department at Lehman College of the City University of New York, where he's also taught literature courses in the English department. He's previously taught summer workshops for the SEEK program at City College in New York, where he also created the curriculum for intensive reading, writing, and research workshops for incoming first-year students, and has taught at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, Hunter College, and Africana Studies and Sociology. NYU's Gallatin School of Individualized Study, and SUNY purchased as a diversity fellow for the 2011-12 academic year. Research interests include the Black arts and Black power movements, African American popular music, particularly jazz and hip hop, and the literary and cultural connections, and film, and Black and Latin students in higher ed and CUNY system. He's also lectured on Kwanzaa with an educational approach that explains the concepts and places it within the proper historical, cultural, and social context. He has a BA in Media and Communications from the City College of New York and an what's that? A PHI in English with a concentration in Africana Studies from the CUNY Graduate Center. His dissertation researches a profile of the early years of the Last Poets, a performance poetry / activist collective, as a case study of how artists engaged as political activists during the Black arts movement of the late 60s, early 1970s in New York City. It places their work in the context of the Black art movement, Harlem, and Black Puerto Rican political and cultural connections. And Professor Hank Williams has professional affiliations with the Association for the Scholars of Classical African Civilization, African Heritage Studies Association, the Ethiopian Institute for Scholarly Advancement, Jazz Journalists Association, and National Council for Black Studies. Hey, I had to get all of that out so that people know.
Brother Ikemba, you're way too kind. That was too much. Thank you. And good to meet you, brothers Fernando and Isaac. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.
Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show.
Yeah, you hearing all that, it makes me question, how much work I'm doing.
Brother, it's collective. We all trying to.
For sure.
We all try and pick up a little bit of the load.
Yeah. hey, and we got to use that to motivate ourselves and be inspired. I remember I ain't gonna say the person's name because I know everybody don't like this person, but I remember hearing them say, like, people who when they look at someone who is doing great things, the difference between a hater and someone basically someone who gets jealous and envious, like that's someone who hates, right? But you're supposed to be look at that person and be inspired and want to be motivated to do great things. And but that's a big difference.
Well, as you know, in Africana studies, that's why we talk about worldview and value systems. And that's the thing, when you're immersed in a value system that pushes individualism, pushes competition, pushes beating down everybody else so you can get to the top. That's, it's really kind of the natural. It's really kind of the natural outcome of that. So it's, so it's really a struggle but part of that is surrounding yourself with brothers and sisters, who have a different value system and have a different outlook. So as you said, you're inspired by seeing them do the work.
Absolutely, man. And I want this just to be like a conversation. I do have like some specific questions about the course itself. But even before we get into that, we just looked at your bio, heard your bio, and one of the questions I have, I'm curious in how you even got to the point that you are now, where you have accomplished all of these great things, and even the path you took in regards to what you wanted to study and teach. What was some of the things in your background that put you on this path?
Wow, good question. It's a meandering path, and I definitely did not plan to teach. As a matter of fact, I took a full 10 years off while I was an undergrad. Long story short, I went to the City College of New York. Another really great CUNY school. We have kind of a deep family connection. Pop went there when he got out of the Army in World War II. My sister went there just after, really in the wake of open admissions. And my mother actually would have gone there, but unfortunately at that point, she had two strikes against her. She was a Black woman and she was an immigrant. So CCNY basically told her later, and she went down to Hunter College, and they actually had at that point they actually had a quota for Black students, something not too many people know. And this is about the same time as Audre Lorde and Sonia Sanchez were going through, probably a few years before that. So, she ended up at Harlem Hospital School of Nursing, and it all worked out. But we have, really deep connections with the CUNY system. But, when I got back, it was really, well, one of the things before I left was really the, one Black Studies course I had taken, up till then. And that was with one of my JEGNAs, meaning people person who was very impactful, very much a mentor, very much an elder to me, and that was Dr. Leonard Jeffries at City College in New York. So, even while I was basically, when I first started college, I just was not intellectually mature enough and just mature enough in general to really be able to deal with college work. So after going out and working really hard jobs, I got trained as a mechanic for about 10 years. I mean, that kind of reorients you in terms of how you begin to think about life and how you begin to think about all these sort of things. And quite honestly, I ran into a lot of people who had college degrees, and to be honest, they didn't seem any smarter than me. So, my original idea was basically to go back and get an associate's degree and do something technical. But I already had some credits, and I said, well, I got like 40 or 50 credits already, and it's going to be the same thing to get an associate. So I might as well just get a bachelor's degree. And, it took on, and everything kind of took on from there. And, going to graduate school was really a total accident. And I won't get into that story because it's a long one. But I kind of worked my way into, got hooked on the idea of teaching there and thought I could do it at a college level. And I wanted to stay in New York for family reasons and logistical reasons. Pop had already transitioned at that point, but Mom was getting older, and I realized that I kind of had to be able to keep an eye on her. So, going somewhere else wasn't really in the cards. And in a certain extent, I think I'm kind of a mistake, and where the Graduate Center would probably say that, because they don't really intend for you to go in the direction that I went. But sometimes you realize that the ancestors kind of have a different plan for you, and things work out even when they don't think they're going to work out. And I think I was fortunate enough to end up at exactly the right place, where they kind of knew, they kind of knew up front exactly what I was going to do. I was very upfront about it. And I said, well, if I don't get the job, it wasn't really meant for me. And, quite honestly, I'm not afraid of driving a truck to bring in income if I have to, but that was an idea I got from Ward Churchill, the American Indian movement activist, a long time ago. And, he told me something that was very simple, but yet very insightful. Because I think I asked him, how he dealt with, and this was before he got his tenure taken away and removed. And, I kind of asked him, how do you deal with all that? And how do you navigate that? And he basically told me, he said, well, once you think the system is your only option, they got you. And that just kind of stuck with me. So, it's not that I take this very lightly. I actually take it very seriously, because, I'm a New York State employee. And my income is paid for by the tax dollars of state residents, by abuelas, and that's a serious thing. And they trust me to educate their children, and we have to take that very seriously too. And I do.
Yeah.
Which I think was kind of a rambling half answer to your question.
No. That you was on point. I think my brother going to follow up.
Thank you for just kind of opening up on your personal life and getting real down to earth into how you, like how you said, to the system that you would be classified as a mistake, but I think for the diaspora, you are a treasure. One of many treasures, individuals that are willing to indulge themselves into understanding, and getting other people to understand African culture, Africana studies. And so, that's what I would classify any individual right now that is working within Africana studies to better the intellect, to better the minds of the African people. My question to you would be, as you work around, in particular, Amos Wilson's work. And so I would love for you to speak to those that try and use Amos Wilson's work to try and justify operating under the system that we all know has exploited us for years and will continue to do so if we do not properly address it as an African diaspora. If and to expand that even further, how do you embody that into your curriculum? How do you nestle that to get your students to really understand that using the terminology to then justify the means of a colonial system is blasphemy, to say the least?
Good question. Well, the basic contradiction that you're highlighting was one that Bob Amos kind of understood really, really well. And pragmatically, I mean, how I deal with it with my students is you kind of have to have two things in mind. Number one, you have to be able to survive in this, in this society. But at the same time, you need to have a very good theoretical understanding of how things work. And going back to, that whole question of worldview and value systems, the big question is, how do we get ourselves out of this mess, as the late Dr. Jacob Carruthers called it? And that was the thing that really drew me toward Wilson, very particularly for this class, but his work in general, because much of it was, well, all of it really was focused on, very practical question of, okay, what do we do? And, Wilson really kind of approaches things as a classically trained social scientist in kind of a good way, in terms of, his whole thing is, okay, you have to be clear on what the disease is and where you are. But then after that, the question is, okay, well, how do you get out? And what are the practical steps you need to take to try to get yourself to a point where you can get out of the jam that you're in? And it may not be easy, and it may not really be simple, but part of it is coming up with some kind of a plan, being able to get other people on board, because that's the other thing about Wilson. Wilson was very clear that you can't do it alone. There are certainly some things you need to do in terms of internal transformation as well, and he was clear on that too. But that needs to be connected to the wider external social transformation that we actually want to see.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Appreciate
for that.
Yeah, appreciate that answer. Yeah, no problem. Again, Professor Williams, thank you for joining us.
Hank is good, brother.
All right, Hank.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, so this is an international morning show. I'm actually joining from France. I'm currently living in France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, as a Pan-Africanist, I often think and, talk to the comrades about the importance of our worldview. And you mentioned that earlier. You spoke about a worldview. So we speak about the importance of an African worldview. And I wanted to ask you about that, right? Because as you mentioned earlier, you spoke about individualism and all that. So just for you to speak a little bit on the importance of having an African worldview as opposed to having a European, right, or Eurocentric worldview for us African people, specifically in the diaspora.
Good question. Marimba Ani is probably the best person I could point to. Well, there have been a lot of people who've written about worldview, but Marimba Ani has a good, fairly simple breakdown of it in terms of an African worldview being based around communalism, collectivism, and seeing yourself in harmony with the rest of the community, and and with the earth and the world itself. Much of that is drawn from traditional African culture, primarily Mat in Kemet, and also Dogon philosophy and theology. So and there's a good bit more than that, but just to keep it simple, that's kind of the basic thing. Seeing yourself as connected connected with the rest of the community and, with the wider planet itself. And there are a lot of implications, when you begin to think about it that way and begin to think about it in the expansive sense that it's meant. When you go back and take a look at Mott and Dogon, as you'll probably know, it's you begin to, the more you read it and the more you look at it, you really begin to get a sense of how profound and the depth of intuitiveness and the depth of study and commitment our ancestors had. But to bring it back to your very specific point in terms of worldview, that's kind of the that's kind of the basic thing. Seeing yourself as connected, seeing yourself as part of society, and when you do that, but doing that basically puts you at odds with how a lot of the United States in particular, and to a certain extent Western Europe in general, is structured. Absolutely. Where everything is really about the individual, individual achievement, individual success. We even have a big problem with that in terms of Africana studies. A lot of time when they talk about, Black excellence, well, I mean, it's, I like to see African people doing well, but, the question is, how does that actually translate to the rest of us? And, that was really kind of my approach. And, what I decided when I was going to go and teach, I said, it should be, it really needs to be, what I do really needs to be collective in some kind of way. Because if it's just for a paycheck, well, to be honest, I mean, I'd make double the money working for the MTA. And quite honestly, I'd be able to retire earlier. And and that's good work too. I don't want people to interpret that as putting shade on brothers and sisters who do that have a very hard job. But but I think in terms of worldview, that's kind of how I try to approach it, and sort of the simplest presentation of it I can give.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Ikemba.
I would say just on as in regards to the work, MTA and what it is that you're doing. It's not, it's not to belittle the work, but it's the type of impact you can make on people too, through these conversations, and doing, even with the class that you have, just being able to instill something in people who can potentially go out there and change the world, and so. Before I, there's something, I don't know, I'm not digressing right now, but I'm just kind of thinking, like, with the whole hip hop conversation, especially as it revolves around hip hop beginning in New York. And there's been this recent sort of a debate on Puerto Ricans' influence on hip hop and who started hip hop. And just going to your work in regards to the Black arts movement, and how you place your work in the context of the Black arts movement, Harlem and Black, Puerto Rican political and cultural connection. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts, because you look at the Puerto Rican connection in the Black arts movement, not different time period, but we know it's sort of a connection and continuum when it comes to that movement. Yeah.
Good question. I'll give you the answer that the late pianist Randy Weston gave me when I asked him what he thought about hip hop. And he didn't, and I didn't mean it to be troublesome. Like, I meant it very honestly. But he simply said, "Well, it's African rhythms," and left it at that. Now, to be clear, Baba Randy understood that there was much more depth to it than that, and you have differences, in time and space across culture and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But the point that he meant was that, you have to see it as part of this continuum. And that is one of the things that I think is a mistake that is sometimes made with hip hop, which is disconnecting it from the much larger well of culture. So, when I taught it, last time I taught it several years ago at a different institution, interestingly enough, you made a joke before I came on about whether or not Wilson would get you in trouble. The very last time I taught it, I used kind of a standard hip hop reader, and I used Amos Wilson's book on black. I'm blanking. Why am I blanking on the name? On black male criminality. It'll come to me in a moment. So,
is it the black on black violence one?
Thank
or
you. That's it. Black on black violence.
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether it was a coincidence or not, but that was last time. Last time I was tasked with teaching the course. But but to directly answer your question, the African diaspora includes Puerto Rico. It includes the Dominican Republic. It includes Haiti. It includes all those places.
Thank you.
So I don't really get, so my place is not really to get too micro involved in that. Because you really have to see, because to me, you really have to see the entire thing as a continuum. And if you take a look at, New York at that time period, there is plenty black and Puerto Rican, connections, and they're going back and forth. So, I mean, you can try to kind of parse it out, but to me, at least, it's, to a certain extent, I think that's no disrespect to the people who kind of want to drill down into that, but to a certain extent, I think that's kind of going down the wrong road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And viewers, forgive me for even bringing that.
Hey, hold on. I want to weigh in on that a little bit.
Go ahead.
If I can weigh in on that a little bit, when I agree 100% with Hank. When I hear those conversations, I kind of think both sides are wrong right now, because one side is trying to claim it's all African American, and the other side is not. It's like, no, Puerto Rican, but like he said, it's an African thing, right? It's the African diaspora. It's children of the African diaspora that invented hip hop, and and that's what it is. With my organization here, we have we organize a festival called Pan Af Hip Hop, which is Pan African hip hop.
Excellent.
That's where we trying to bring back that consciousness, that understanding that this is the thing of the African diaspora. It's ours, and most of and they definitely were Puerto Ricans involved, and most of them were of African descent too. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
So that's definitely that's.
But I mean, the larger question is, how do we get to the we as a community? And as larger communities, and to get back to your question about Pan-Africanism, thinking about ourselves, globally as Africans, because that's right. Garvey's point is essentially that African people have a math problem at a basic level, which is that we keep trying to multiply the amount of cultural, political, and economic power times the amount of Africans in the one small place where we live. And if you compare that number with multiplying it times the number of Africans globally, you get two very, very different numbers. And, Garvey's point is it's that second number you got to start looking at, because if you keep yourself trapped in that first number, you're always going to get jammed up. Now, we're not going to be able to get all Africans, that's never going to happen. No. But, that's not the idea. When you can begin to get a wider plurality of us together, and to be honest, get rid of some of this foolishness of, I'm not going to talk to that African because his or her ancestors were colonized by the Spanish and they speak Spanish. I'm not going to talk to this other African because his or her ancestors were colonized by the French and they speak Creole. I'm not going to talk to this African because, because they still speak Wolof and just came to the country. We just need to get rid of some of that nonsense.
Absolutely.
No, I appreciate that. I wanted to get into the course, while we have you with us. And like I said earlier, I was inspired to see that someone using a blueprint for Black Power as part of their curriculum. It blew my mind away, because I actually, I studied that book from front to back. On my platform, Recharge Colonialism. I do a study session. I haven't done any in the last few months, but I want to get back to it. So
please let me know. I would love to join.
Oh man, say less, as the youth would say less. Yeah, but how I guess, what was the motivation? Well, not necessarily the motivation. That might be part of the question, but how did this course come about?
Very, very good questions. In terms of the choice of the book itself, it was one of the easiest ones that I've ever had. And you know how it's a lot of time trying to find the appropriate course book for a course can sometimes be a really difficult process. A couple of years into teaching our African American history survey, I'm kind of still trying to find the book I want. But as soon as I was asked to do the course, there was no question that it was going to be Blueprint for Black Power. And much of that came from Dr. Jeffries, who, would bring it to every single class. And, as you know, it's like an imposing book, and he had the hardcover. So he would just sit it up on, on his desk, So we would just be sitting up there, looking at you the entire time. And, and I picked it up, and to be honest, I had kind of leafed through it and read a couple of chapters, but not really done, in-depth reading. So as soon as I got tasked with teaching the course, I said, this is a book that I'm going to use. In terms of how the course itself came about, that actually came through student protest, and was probably at this point about 15 years ago. Our then very active student group on campus, Black Legacy, they won this community and urban development sort of subfield in Africana Studies, with the Fieldwork course as the capstone course. And my colleague Kevin McGruder, who's now out at I think he's out at Antioch in Ohio or something like that, was the one who originally taught it. And I got to and when he left for there, I was asked by Lehman to teach it, and I already had I kind of had the basic framework of what I wanted to do in mind. But to a certain extent, Wilson's book and Wilson's ideas really shaped the approach that I had to it. And to give honestly to give my colleagues in the department a lot of credit. Nobody actually, nobody asked me anything. Nobody said no. Nobody said, let me see your syllabus. Nobody said, how are you going to approach this? How is this going to fit? They just let me do what I wanted to do. So it's been, from that point of view, it's been great. It hasn't been completely smooth, but to their credit, nobody really put any kind of blocks in my way in terms of approaching it how I want to approach it.
As smooth as possible.
Yes, I mean, there are always institutional things you're going to run into, because the college, it's kind of a funny thing, because the college kind of, to a certain extent, the idea is to fly a little bit under the radar and have it be kind of a maroon space. Because what I've learned is that sometimes, the more people who kind of know what you're doing and kind of try to dig into it in detail, it's that too many cooks in the kitchen type thing. So, they would probably they probably get the idea that it's some sort of, we go and feed the homeless and paint a park bench type thing. And, people who think that, I let them think that, because you have to choose your battles. Absolutely. But, that doesn't really get us to, the real goals that I want out of the course.
Yeah. And if you could, just explain some of those real goals that you intend with your course, and what would be the end result for a student from the beginning to the end? What would you hope that they would understand, what they would then accomplish after going through this course? What is your end game with this syllabus? So
Excellent question. I mean, the course itself, at least on paper, is basically to facilitate students doing field work, meaning going out and getting experience working with community organizations. A lot of that kind of got reshuffled and changed through COVID, and we're kind of still trying to. I think we're kind of still trying to get back to something of where we were. But that's the basic idea on the books. How I approach it in particular is a couple of things. Number one, the fieldwork component is part of it. I primarily want students to be working with organizations that are actually going to be building power and capacity in the Black community, meaning not so much doing, say, feeding the homeless or things like that, which is good work. But the problem is when you're working at kind of that very basic level with people who are so beaten down that, if their task has to be survival, period, then you can, once you get past survival, you can think about building community and building power and all that. So I kind of try to push students to work with organizations who are actually trying to build community capacity. So, either doing conscious work that's going to help people in the political process, or, help people working on, actual community issues, or, any kind of a range of things. So that's kind of the basic thing. And that's how Wilson's ideas shape it, because the idea is, how can we actually build community power and assist people doing community power? And part of the approach is, kind of also thinking through the type of institution we are as City University, and very particularly, what it means for this course to be in Africana Studies, because, you have fieldwork courses all over the place. But to me, at least, our task is much, much different than, say, a fieldwork course in social work or anywhere else, which is that the original idea of Africana Studies was to be able to develop people who were going to have the capacity to help us build community-wide. Dr. John Henrik Clarke always used to talk about flag independence, meaning places that came, a lot of the places that went through the decolonial process simply did not have enough technically trained people to actually take over and effectively run society, once they got independence. Now, to be clear, that was the fault of the colonialists. But, as articulated by the National Council of Black Studies, the idea of Black Studies departments should be academic excellence and social responsibility. So that's kind of where that piece comes in. Our students actually have quite a bit of technical skills that are useful to the community. So, my approach with the course is that, part of it should be that us being in these spaces, we should be doing two things. Number one, trying to pull as many people as we can in, and number two, quite honestly, throwing as much as we can of the institution over the fence into the community. And I would actually rather that we didn't have any damn fences. But until we get to that point, my goal is throwing as much as I can, metaphorically speaking, at least, over. I should probably make that clear in case somebody is listening, but metaphorically, at least, throwing as many of the resources, we have over the fence of Jerome, and onto Jerome Avenue, so the people can get them. And, that should include our labor. But in terms of what I think students get out of it, it's the idea, hopefully, is a different perspective in terms of what you can do with the technical knowledge and experience you're getting from this. Hopefully, a much better appreciation of the nitty gritty and nuts and bolts it takes to actually run a community organization, to build independent institutions, and to try and build power. And, and of course they do get some very practical skills too, which I encourage them, which I definitely encourage them to highlight. They get skills in terms of public speaking, they get skills in terms of organizing, they have writing skills, but, those are the technical skills that, I'm talking about that are useful to the community. For instance, with the current election, a lot of people kind of sort of didn't understand what Project 20, I
was just going to ask you the question on how you feel your curriculum will survive under Project 2025 in its culmination, because people believe that Project 2025 starts in 2025. It's a bipartisan project that has been it's gone through the Trump administration, it went through the Biden administration, it went through the Obama administration. Glenn Ford talks about the amount of funding that was funneled through the Obama administration to the Heritage Foundation, which is the author of this said project. So that was actually going to be my last question to ask you. I don't know if anybody else had another question, but it was like, how do you feel about this election process and how this might affect your curriculum, which openly combats this said system? It is a curriculum to get people to openly be opposed via the means of those technical resources that you talked about, those technical lanes. How do you think your curriculum will fare in the next 4 years under this rise of ethno-evangelical fascism?
Wow. Short answer is I don't know. Although elections have consequences, and that you're seeing one of them. But fortunately, being in New York, I'll say there's a little bit more space to operate in terms of that particular part of it. Were I in Florida or Texas, it would be, I probably wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. So, that I understand too. On the other hand,
the StreamYard down.
On the other hand, New York is going to be, squarely in their sights, and we have to be real about that. But I think to go back and kind of cover both questions, one of the things I told my students is that's basically one chapter in Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power, chapter 9, where he kind of walks you through the, he calls it the, where he kind of walks you through how public policy gets put together and dealt with. And, he walks you through the history of the Heritage Foundation, some of these other think tanks. So, what I told them is, okay, that's actually a technical skill. So the test is not whatever you're going to write up for me, do that. But the test is you going back, digesting that chapter, and then being able to explain to people in very clear, simple language, okay, this is how influence works. This is how these think tanks work. This is how it influences public policy, and just break it down in very simple language so that, people in your union, or people in your tenants association, or people in the break room on the job, or, maybe even people in your Bible study, can understand at a very, very basic level and get it, and that's a technical skill that you have. But, you have to understand that as a technical skill, and you also have the sensibility so that, you're trying to utilize it in that way.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm gonna pass this over to Ikemba.
Well, see, Fernando, did you have another question? I have one more, but see if.
Well,
Fernando.
I do have one more. I wanted to ask you real quick about the last poets. I know you did some work. I just wanted to ask you about, the importance of having, artists such as the last poets that are actually, revolutionaries, and actually part of the struggle. The importance of, having such artists, and the need of that still, obviously to this day. I mean, not that we don't have any, but
Excellent question. It's a great question, and honestly, I think that's a much wider and much more difficult thing that that artists really have to confront now, because one of the big differences, as you point out, there are a lot of artists, including a lot of people in hip hop, and I know a few personally, who have the same sort of value system. They have the same sort of aspirations that people coming through the Black Arts and Black Power movement did. The difference is the situation around them, which is that you don't have movements that are anywhere near as strong as there were then. You don't have the amount of organizations where you kind of have a certain amount of structure, because one of the things is, you need support around you, because the rest of society is going to tell you that you're crazy. So you need support around you, and people who keep telling you no. It's the rest of the stuff. It's society around you that is crazy. You're trying to stay on a slightly different path, and there aren't really enough artists. I don't think there are enough communities around where artists can kind of plug in and get that mutual support. And to be honest, there aren't enough artists now who are doing serious study, because that's the thing. You talk to the last poets, and they all did serious study. I mean, Felipe Luciano was one of the founding members of the Young Lords, but Abiodun, Umar, all the rest of them, they were involved with study groups. The jazz musicians. Randy Weston was incredibly well read. He's as a matter of fact, he was featured in a documentary on Sheikh Anta Diop.
Right.
And when I got to talk to him, unfortunately, I really wasn't prepared enough, and I kind of asked him the wrong question. I kind of asked him about Dr. John Henrik Clarke, and in reality, I should ask him about Dr. Ben and Sheikh Anta Diop. So he gave me a kind of simple answer, and then later on, I heard him talk volumes about Dr. Ben and Diop's work. So, I think to bring it back to your question, I think that's the key thing. You need to have artists who are not only artistically engaged and serious about their craft, but also politically engaged and doing the amount of study that will kind of let them merge the two, like Amiri Baraka and a whole lot of other people did.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you this question, just anecdotally connected to Fernando's? Do you see that prevalent in contemporary times right now with some of our artists, jazz, whether it's jazz, hip hop, R&B, whatever? Do you see that like on the rise? Do you see that being something very prevalent, or is it just something you're kind of disconnected from to answer on?
Do I see what on the rise? I mean, study
like
and
contemporary artists like today that show and exemplify the same things that say a last poets, or say, do you see any artists contemporary now that are doing so?
Oh, absolutely. In various art forms. There are people in jazz who are friends of mine who are honestly more well read than I am. A couple of, I've invited a couple of them to my classes and just said, take over. There are people in hip hop who are serious about it, but it's, the problem is a more general society wide problem in that, folks aren't really reading, aren't doing enough study the way they should, and aren't really taking it seriously and aren't operating collectively. That includes us, by the way. Because people in the academic space aren't immune from that. And the pressures of society and even institutions are to, keep pushing you to kind of simplify, dumb things down. Don't do the deep study. Don't take the time. And it's, but that's affecting, so that affects all of us. But the knock-on effect for artists, I think, is even tougher because of what they're trying to do. And it's really, really hard to make money as an artist in society. And when I mean make money, I'm not talking Beyonce level money. I'm talking the amount of money to successfully sustain you and actually let you do your art and follow your vision.
That's right.
And so when you combine that with the push toward just spitting out stuff that's going to be social media friendly, that's going to be easily digestible, that's not really going to make people think very hard, because anything that makes folks think very hard, they don't want to deal with. It's a lot that they're up against. And there are quite a few who are doing it successfully, but it's a really difficult thing. And it's something quite honestly that we have to tackle collectively. And I don't really have a good answer for, except just to tell my students that, you got to slow down. You got to think. Most of the time I start my classes playing some music, often, but not always jazz, partially because, just that practice of, okay, come in, pause, listen. It's like, listen to Quincy Jones. That's what we did. That's what we did this week. I started every class with walking in space. I said, we're walking this brother into the ancestral realm. But, the process of pausing and sitting and being still and listening carefully for 10 minutes, that kind of trains you, and it kind of decouples your brain and lets you be able to get into the space where you can begin to think deeply and do the type of work we need to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. It's, as you know, I have several questions. We don't have time to get to them, but you at least answer, I think, some of these questions within your answers, and would love to have you come back on the platform to continue the conversation.
That would be great. Yeah.
And one of the things too, we'll definitely build offline, because basically our institutions are our siblings, and in New York, and I recently, I think I briefly talked to you about it, the social justice community organizing workshops I'm doing on Saturdays, and I'm gonna send you a flyer if I haven't already, but this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing. And you as with the work that you're doing with your course, just to have you a part of that in whatever capacity, I think can help develop this to be something like really huge, because I think we both have similar, if not the same, objectives when it comes to nation building. But definitely appreciate you coming on. And so the folks know too, Dr. Wilson was a part of this CUNY system that
yes, he was.
He
taught at Postos, where they did not tenure him, although he'd pretty much most of it posthumously, but he damn near outpublished just about everybody there. It was it was totally criminal.
Yeah.
But brother, I really appreciate you, because you are at Medgar Evers, and you were at, and you know this, but just so that our viewers know this, you were at an incredibly important institution, one that very much came out of the Black Power movement, out of the struggle for independent institutions, and the idea and the need to have a Black institution in Brooklyn, using, harnessing the money we pay for taxes to try and bring that vision about, and only survived because of the dedication of the staff and faculty who would not allow it to be downgraded in the fiscal crisis in the 1970s of New York, which was absolutely heroic work. And I know y'all have a lot of struggles and issues out there, but people really need to know that when you go to Medgar Evers and you cross that threshold, you are really on sacred ground.
Hey, appreciate that. Yeah, and I'm an alum as well at the institution.
All right.
I always take pride in telling folks that.
Well, you should.
Yeah. Indeed. If there's anything before you go, if there's anything you want to let the people know as far as like where to find you, if so, or any last thoughts, go right ahead.
Easiest way to find me is to go to my website, professorwilliams.info. That's Professor Williams with no spaces .info, or you just punch my name, Hank Williams plus Lehman College, into the search engines, and it'll come up.
Okay.
Thank
It
you
was
so
a
much.
pleasure having you on. I'm actually going to be going to that direct website and hoping I could set up something with you in regards, because I didn't know you had connections toward Churchill, and me and him both sit on the ad hoc committee for Leonard Peltier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I just, I'd love to have a discussion with you in regards to not just his work, but your work as well, and get my network, dedicated to understanding just the importance of it.
Sure. Just to be clear, I don't want to overstate my connections with Ward Churchill. I talked to the brother once when he came to, when he came to New York City to do a lecture. But I'm deeply influenced by his work and the people in AIM, also.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's do that.
All right. Peace and black power, my brother. Appreciate you.
Indeed. Take care, my brothers.
Uhuru. Hey.
That conversation, man.
Hey.
I love it too.
Another good one.
Have an individual like such on still we still have people out there, man. We have people that are doing work. This is an individual, an elder, because he's older than me, doing the work. And so, it was really dope. I'm glad that you were able to get in contact with the individual and really highlight his work. And I think a lot of what he said is what he teaches is a lot of what we talked about in the first 20 minutes of the show is we got to start building survival programs. We got to start being more technical when it comes to how we combat fascism, how we combat this colonial system. And I think a curriculum and a system like that, and especially him using Dr. Amos's work, is very vital because it reinserts narratives and thoughts and ways of thinking that have already been discussed. These topics have already been addressed. It's just now utilizing it in a contemporary form to get the masses of individuals to really understand what does combating fascism look like. And in my sense, I know that that's not what his curriculum in particular talks about. But that was a good conversation for me, and I can't wait to, hopefully if I have him on my network, but you already know I'm gonna be sending invitations to everybody to come on as I normally do. If you guys want to have
for sure.
That's dope.
And don't y'all do something around hip hop, Fernando?
Yeah,
I do definitely. Vital Hoops is hip hop as well. Vital Hoops is hip hop. Basketball, Pan-Africanism, and the holistic plant-based lifestyle. So definitely.
Yeah, you sound like you might be good for that conversation.
Yeah, without a doubt. But to bounce back off of what Isaac was saying, I thought it was great as well. From the beginning, the brother Hank, he spoke about how it's about collectivism. It's about all of us. All of us doing a little bit together. When Isaac spoke about I feel like I'm not doing enough. He was like, nah, it's about the collective. And like you say,
right.
Speaking of brothers like that helps us also, uplifts us, because when we're on about our everyday life, sometimes when we're not with the comrades, we feel like what I'm saying, like we're crazy, like he said, because we don't think like everybody else. Let's just put it that way. Everybody else is kind of within the matrix, and we're kind of into movement and all of that. But that last point he mentioned about the artist, when you asked him about the artist, I think that, the revolutionary artists are out there, but it's kind of like the movement. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the organizations. They're they're underground. The algorithm doesn't favor them. You know what I'm saying? The same way it is with us. So
he kind of did exactly what I intended that question to do, which was for him to highlight the fact that people like Beyonce aren't the people who he's talking about. There are individuals that we do not know, as Fernando emphasized, that are out there. They've been out there. So as much as it was a question, in regards to that, it also was kind of, I wanted hopefully something to play out where he'd call out people like Beyonce, like those aren't the ones I'm talking about.
But it's like when I still hear people today talk like like the movement is over. People are like, back in the day, these organizations and blah blah. Like obviously, they have more strength. It was more of them, but like we're still in the struggle. You know what I'm saying? There's still many organizations out there doing the work. So, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's the same thing with the artists. You know, they're out there.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's very important.
It'd be dope to carve out a space for that. And I'm not sure if that's what you guys do on your platform, as far as bringing those revolutionary artists on and having the conversation and giving them that exposure, you know, but like having something consistent like that, you know, on your platform, or you know, here, maybe we carve out a space here, but that would be, I think that would be, you know,
we already know every guest is a recruitment stage. It's a recruitment interview.
No, listen,
but I'm saying the artist though itself, like bringing different revolutionary artists on. Yeah.
Well, I've emphasized like on the back burner. You guys already know. I was, you know, people like Boots Riley, you know, joining in and chiming in on this conversation. Obviously, we have individuals, you know, that, you know, for me at least, you know, I speak for myself in this regard, you know, that they're in mainstream media, you know, that have talked about recently, like, you know, political prisoners and whatnot. You know, having those individuals on, I think would be vital too. Because, you know, it brings in this, we're not all going to think the same. And at the same time too, you know, certain individuals, you know, aren't going to look at us as, you know, like that, you know, and I, you know, I think getting individuals on to really discuss, you know, from an artist perspective, how they perceive the current demographic of not just our diaspora, but the environment and of it itself. The you know, what do you feel like? How are you combating, you know, fascism as a brother or a sister, you know, from the diaspora, you know? And I agree with you, Kemba. It's something I think is vital to have. Shout out to Vital Hoops.
To get actually to answer your question, Kemba, actually, our latest episode, you know, episode 69 of the Vital Hoops is with my brother and comrade Elam Vance, who is a hip hop artist from Lomé, you know, he still lives in the motherland, and so he's actually a comrade. He's actually part of our organization, the Pan African League Umoja. And he's a quote unquote real artist. What I mean by a real artist is, like, you know, he actually makes a living, you know, through his music. So that's definitely, he's one of those artists for sure, you know, a revolutionary artist that's out there. So
we also have individuals, because artistry is not just music either. It's also painting. It's also we had someone from the Sudanese our Sudanese brothers that were on here. I think Mazen. He's a model, like, you know, so, you know, like, you know, stuff like that. You know, people have to understand that there are individuals out there that have that same African, you know, intellect, that Pan-African intellect. And so, you know, I'm giving shout outs left and right, but nonetheless, you know, it's
appreciate it though.
You know, people don't get it. They don't know because the media doesn't tell them. And that's why BPM Reloaded is vital. Why Black, you know, guerrilla media is vital. Indigenous decolonial media is vital. You know, I shouted out Vital Hoops like 3 times right there.
Vital Hoops is for the culture.
Right.
Indeed. I appreciate the conversation though, because even it has me wanting to do more as far as connecting.
I'm looking up on Medgar Evers. You might be my professor in the next couple months. I'm on Medgar Evers College right now. Shoot, I'd love to
Can I take some online classes, Professor Jordan?
Hey, you can. I'll be trying not to, you know, put that all out there. I don't be, you know, I mean, people be all looking for me, but yeah, but you can. Maybe make sure you just you know, register for the school, get enrolled into the school.
Yeah, I'm gonna get enrolled. I'm
gonna request too. Professor Jordan.
Let's do it. Let's get it.
Is this gonna be a conflict of interest? A student and a professor on the same network?
Because they know how I felt you in a minute, man. If you ain't on, okay, how cool we are.
You're gonna have me go all the way on the other side of this occupation for you to be
take this study.
You better put some work. You better
it's a word. I take these studies serious, man. Don't come in yes, you know, we here to learn.
I am serious. I'm trying to further. I would like to get my master's. That's something that I would like to accomplish in my lifetime. You know, and Medgar Evers College is, you know, like you know, Hank said, it's an institution rooted in, you know, the Black radical tradition. It's instituted in understanding our importance, you know, via intellect, via physical, you know, and via spiritual. And so, I mean, why not? I mean, again,
you got me thinking, Isaac. You got me
right
thinking.
Shit, right? He's like, had to ask his wife, what's going on?
You got me thinking, man. I started after the bachelor's.
But I ain't gonna keep it real. I be trying to have it on the low. Because I'm like, I don't want to say anything that had these folks be like, I'm gonna get him canceled. You know, start calling. You know how folks are. Oh, okay, start. But you know, on this episode is out there, so it's out there. But that'd be my whole thing. That's why I be kind of vague on
I get it,
spaces that I'm in. Yeah.
No, I understand it, because I mean, you just look at what happened with my network. Lost what I lost as far as for funding, and you know, it was all because I was speaking candidly about and with an organization, and you know, I completely understand that. But nonetheless, though, I do, you know, like to give flowers, and you know, obviously, you know, you are a part of an institution that is, you know, rooted in excellence, and so you know, shout out to you and what you guys do. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, let's go for like a quick Black Power break, and then we could close out with I think, Ikemba, do you got a article, or do you want to go with the one that we didn't get to go through in the beginning?
Let's get to the one we didn't get to in the beginning. We can do that, and just I got a quick announcement as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So
let's get to this Black Power break.
All right, we'll be back, y'all.
Rise up.
At the time of Jesus' birth, and we've talked about that in this meeting before, and I want to say some more about it. At the time of Jesus' birth, the Jews, like most people in the world that was known at that time, were dominated by the Romans. They were living under colonial domination, colonial bondage, just like African people here, and just like we have in various places around the world been living. The Jews lived under Roman domination. The Romans had what they call an empire. An empire is where a government of a people not only dominate and rule their own people, but many other peoples around the world. The Roman Empire was comparable to what America is today. America is an empire. It feels like it can tell people what to do, and if you don't do it, we'll attack you. You can't have this kind of weapon or that kind of weapon. We'll blow you up. We'll take your oil. We'll do all these other kinds of things to you. That's how Rome was during the day. And except it was a more honest, they call it an empire today, even though if you read certain kinds of documents and certain kinds of papers being written by the thinking representatives of the white power today, more and more they are referring to America as an empire. Except they don't call Bush an emperor, they call him the president. Well, back then they were more honest, they called him the emperor. Rome had an emperor. An emperor, an empire, you can see the connection between the names. An emperor is someone who rules over an empire. Now, the thing is that the people who are citizens of the empire, they live well because they live off the fruits of what the emperor brings from all over the world, all the oppressed peoples of the world. You find all their resources coming to the empire, coming to Rome. And they were coming from every place. The Jews, and I'm speaking of Jews, but Jews are just Semites. who lived in what they now call the Middle East, Arabs or Semites, and there were all other kinds of people, Syrians and what have you, who are also Arabs, etc., who lived in the same area. And all of them had to pay tribute to Rome. So the Romans lived pretty well. The Rome, of course, is in Europe, as you know, right? Rome is in Europe. What they call Italy now is the headquarters of what Rome was, white people. And although it may or may not have been an issue at the time, the Jews were not white people. Jews got white lately, relatively lately. And the Jews were dominated by the Romans. And the Jews didn't want to be dominated by the Romans, because any thinking human being wants to be self-determining. They don't want somebody else over them. They don't want somebody else dominating them, do they? They want to be a self. You can't have a national dignity if every time you look up there's somebody who's telling you how you have to do things and when you have to do it. And in fact, certain terms where you say you can't even act like a black person. Oh, you can't. Not in America if you're going to succeed. And everybody in here know that's the truth. You can't. If you be too black, you will not succeed. You can't go on the job being black, right? You can't go nowhere being too black. You remember when they used to not hire you if you had dreadlocks, if you had cornrows, if you had afros, or any of those stuff? You can't be too black. Only when white people started getting dreadlocks was it cool. So, and when they found out that dreadlocks didn't mean nothing for a lot of these old sellouts, and sometimes he had a dreadlock and a processed brain. You had dreadlock hair and a perm on your brain. You understand? So they discovered that, and they said, let the Negroes have dreadlocks. But that's how empire runs it. And when you have an empire, people are asking the question like about what happened to Mtundu. And Mtundu spoke out, and the police attacked him. And white people say, oh, the police don't act that way. And it's true, the police do not act that way. If you were citizens of the empire, if you were Roman citizens, the Roman police didn't treat the white people in Rome the way they was treating the Jews who were living in Israel. Treat you differently. Because one was a citizen and then one was a subject. There's a difference in being a citizen and a subject, right? So when Jesus was born, Rome was living, the Jews were living under Roman domination, and they had the same kinds of problem that you got today. Among the problems that you have when somebody else runs your affairs, you can't get along with each other. You notice that? And you say it all the time. Niggas just can't get together. You say it all the time. And one of the reasons it's hard for you to get along with each other is because you displace your anger. You mad with the ruling class. You stay mad with white people, but you done found out you disguise it even to yourself. Now you get insulted all the time. Almost every day you get insulted. And the reason you don't go behind the counter and snatch them up and do something damaging to them, because they're going to say, call security.
Call security.
You know I was on it. That's a fact, man.
He be spitting that real.
Fernando, we know you gotta head out. Just some remarks on what obviously we just watched together. And maybe you could cue up some things that you got going on for your multitude. And Fernando does way more than we do. He got a hip hop show, got a Pan-African Cuban related show. He got Vital Hoops on not just Vital Hoops YouTube, but also on VPPM. He's doing a lot. I love it though. I love it.
Definitely doing a lot. I definitely got a meeting with the organization. We're working on Pan Af Hip Hop, our next big event. But I definitely when I listening to this video that you just played, to this Black Power break, I was listening to the part about how people have dreadlocks, but then they have a permanent brain. And that's so real, man, because I'm still on that. I still remember when brothers wore dreads, it meant something. You know what I mean? Like my dreads to me are definitely a political statement. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, we actually spoke about that, you know, with Kalanji. Shout out to Kalanji, how, you know, the Mau Mau, you know, the influence of the Mau Mau. For those of you who don't know, you know, the Mau Maus were freedom army, you know, of Kenya that fought against the British, and they let their hair grow. You know, they had the locks, and that's actually where the Rastas got the inspiration from. So a lot of people say that it's, you know, whatever else, but it's actually the Mama that inspired the Rastas. It's about being anti-colonial, and it's about being an African. That's what dreadlocks are about. You know what I mean? Because understanding that as African people, when we let our hair grow, it automatically locks. So you know, I thought that was important, and it was interesting how today it's just a hairstyle. You know what I mean? Today people just wear locks just to wear them, and it's not. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just wanted to let that out there, and yeah, I appreciate y'all, comrades.
Hey, real quick though, I want to attend that Pan Africa. When that's going to be in France?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's gonna be in Paris, man. You coming out here?
Hey, I'm gonna have to. How much time I got? Get myself together.
Hey, man, it's
when is it?
We don't have a set date yet, but I'll definitely let everybody know.
2025 though.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's looking like it's gonna be. I don't want to say anything yet, but you got a few months. I'll let y'all know soon.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it would be great to have you, man, out here for sure, man. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we also I'm trying to make that happen.
That'd be great, man. We also got, but that's a little too soon. But we got November, I believe November 7th. We organizing the Pan-African universities out here. So we're doing 2 days, November 7th and 8th, I believe.
Do the work, comrade. In Google.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt, man. But I appreciate y'all. I appreciate our guests as well. And Uhuru. Let y'all brothers keep it going. Uhuru.
Right on. Let's keep it going. You ready? You ain't about to fall asleep on me, right?
Yeah, I was about to. No, I'm just playing. No,
because I know it's what we like 5 a.m. probably where you are right now.
Yeah, 4.
Something like that. 4 a.m, man. Real quick, do you want to go into the story first? I wanted to share an announcement.
I would say share the announcement, and then we can get into the story. And I just to kind of keep it to the run sheet, there is a story based in Atlanta, and so I know that our comrade Kalanji, this probably mean a lot, to his community and group of people that are heavily doing a lot of work there. So go ahead and give us this important announcement. And then we can get into the run sheet, which is for reference for you, comrade. That is going to be number 2 in the run sheet.
All right, appreciate that. So, this is unbelievable. It's a lot going on here. I don't know if I'm able to. Okay, yeah, here we go. So if you're in New York or in the New York area, there's going to be an event on November the 13th. So Malcolm X was right. This is going to be revolving around the Malcolm X centennial that's coming up. May 19th is going to be the 100-year anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X. So, join the 2025 Black Unity Offensive and United Front Against Fascism. That's Wednesday, November 13th, 6:30 p.m. at New Canaan Baptist Church. That's going to be in Brooklyn, New York. So for those who are in the area and can make that, and one of the lead organizers is the December 12th movement. So yeah, if you're out there, I'll definitely be there in the building. I'm gonna be organizing something like this in Brooklyn, and I'm not there. All right, I got hear what y'all talking about. What's going down? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. So we might have our brother Omawali back on before that. I don't know. I know he's been on here twice, and both of those times that he's been on here have been like very powerful conversations. And I think this is a great program coming out of Black Solidarity Day. So sort of just taking that momentum and building with various community leaders and organizations to get some work done. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. I wish I could attend, but I currently live on the West Coast, and so there ain't really too much of that going on here in Las Vegas, which is kind of, you know, why I've been making the decision on, you know, potentially leaving, because there really isn't not that there's no revolutionary potential here, but it's not to the level that I want, you know, that I'm accustomed to in California. And you know, I think PSL has it on lock out here as far as for like,
oh, they do?
You know,
where you at?
You know, yeah, they have programs. DSA has programs and stuff. I was a DSA member, and I, you know, tried to volunteer with PSL out here, but they're on some nonsense. I'll just keep it to that. You know, there's some other organizations I haven't really checked out yet that I know do some work, and you know, they follow my work and stuff on, you know, the network that I have. So they out here in Philly. You know, I wouldn't say there isn't zero potential. It's just not to what I'm used to. You know, like when you're used to certain aspects of radical, you know, technical means of you know, creating things in communities, it's not at the rate that I'm accustomed to. And you know, I wish I could be, and I have, you know, tried, but it's not something that they're not willing to. they don't want to. You know, it goes back to a lot of people read something and not know what they read, and then quote it, not know that the quotes that they're talking about are themselves. So, but I know
we better get to this story.
So in Atlanta, let me share my screen for everybody. It says right here, Atlanta Democrats blocked the Cop City referendum and alienated a voter turnout operation. And so let me go back to the show notes because they're in a different tab. It says right here in the article, it states, we can never repair the damage that was done when the city decided to repress the votes of 116,000 people, said Barrington Ward on Saturday. It is a public safety issue, right, that I think that the Stop Cop City movement tapped into, but more importantly, than that, it is a democracy issue. And so in the midst of the Republicans taking everything that they possibly can, it's these cop cities are going to continue, and the people's opinion is going to decrease drastically if it has zero already if you don't already see it being, you have zero say so in how things are ran. And so, you know, I can only speak too candidly because I don't live in Atlanta. So all I can say is that I live next to two cop cities, and there isn't enough, like I said, there isn't enough talk between DSA, PSL, and all these to combat these cop cities the same way that they were doing in Atlanta. I know on my indigenous homelands, you know, Ohlone territory, they're building cop cities there. I believe it's 2 as well. You know, so I could speak to those and the ones that I'm around, and I can say that we again, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, Ikemba, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. We need to start creating more ways to combat fascism, and at the same time look at the means of which that we've the tactics that we do use, and question if they're viable to moving forward, or have they been a part of that stagnation process that certain organizations we see are going through, which is where they're too busy wanting to be the best in media, the best on, the one that gets the most likes on Instagram, the one that gets the most likes on Twitter, the one that has the most, powerful YouTube account, the one that, all of these things don't matter, because we still have people out on the streets that don't have blankets, when we are seeing rapid amounts of freezing on levels that I've never seen before. The hell froze over here in Sin City, so we are seeing homelessness, displacency. We are seeing on a mass level now that they got who they wanted. So we are going to see, in many ways, things start to deregulate. Certain things go in a way that does not put the people in favor, because this system never wants the people to be in favor. It wants us to be in servitude. And I think we need to start understanding what that means moving forward. So.
Yeah, and I know we don't have a lot of time. I would just say that, it's an important thing. I'm just going to, what I'm about to say is inspired by Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown. And when he talked about sort of like building these alternatives, what we must do when we go into the community, don't necessarily go into the community with a program, right? Because the people may have programs already, and they're not willing to necessarily like stop what they already have. That may be working, may not be working, but when you go into the community, you need to like meet the people where they are. And if you do have a program, at least making sure that like it's a practical program that's already built, not necessarily like bringing an idea for a program and saying, let's do this, because people want to see the people want to see something that could possibly be working and not be thinking like in theory that this might work. And I say all that to say, like, even with the Cop City thing, I'm just thinking as far as just like organizing and getting more people to understand the importance of stopping the spread, stopping Cop City, stopping the spread of Cop City, right? And the bigger issue that we have with police occupation is, going into the community and working with the community to build some sort of alternative, because there are people who have alternatives and maybe doing some things. We may have to come with some political education as we're working with them, but at least like meeting the people where they are, because you have a lot of people who are inviting police into their communities. And so, what do we do to combat that and get them to see that, hey, we don't necessarily, need the police to come into our communities? Maybe building bridges with people who are creating institutions or programs to address the need, to address the needs of the people that sort of I know we probably got to end soon, but I guess like the conditions in our community that calls for the need of a police unit, which has been exacerbated by the colonial state, working with those people to combat criminality, drug abuse, and so forth, right? Because that's why people think that they need police, because they feel like they live in a community that's plagued by criminality. I wish I could flesh that out some more, but I know we have time.
Yeah, we're pressed for time, my comrade. To those that are watching, we enjoyed the time with you. We hope that you tune in next week. We will be back. I know that I will be back regularly, at least for a couple episodes. And we got some guests that are lined up. I've been talking to some people, doing some research and whatnot. So yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Until then, rise up, but most importantly, mask up.
Rise up.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares. mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces when it's on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. A chariot's a swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.